Mike Scharfenberg, Game Plan You today. And welcome to episode 21 of Interview with Influencers. And as always, thank you for spending part of your day with us. And from all of us here at Game Plan You, and Happy New Year. We hope you all had a joyful, blessed, safe, healthy New Year with your loved ones. And hope you're off to a 2-0 start and really getting out there and crushing the week. And we spent the time really building some relationships and teeing up some really special guests starting today for you guys moving forward. So really excited about that. One quick thing I wanted to hit on before we bring out our special guest was just something I noticed, and I'd love to ask my guests about this as well. But in terms of the new year, right? You see a lot of posts about 2020 and thank God it's over, get it out of here, and I completely understand that, right? But at the end of the day, it's just a number. And the problems that we had in 2020, a lot of times it's going to carry over, unfortunately. And where I'm going with this, it's all about your mindset and how you approach things. If it wasn't for the pandemic, right, it's going to be something else. So it's really moving into 2021, have that emphasis and that mindset of, I'm going to get hit with adversity, but it's how am I going to overcome that? How am I going to stay positive? How am I going to continue to help others? As the great Larry Long says, every day you're up is a good day. You got 365 days in a year, and each day you have the opportunity to make an impact. So just keep that in mind, a little nugget there as we move into 2021. But with that said, let's bring out our very special guest. This gentleman is a up-and-coming rock star in the sport industry. And, him and I hit it off right from the start with just our passion and thirst for knowledge and building relationships, and servicing others. And just our positive mindsets and our positive attitudes. So without further ado, let's bring out the current content curator with the Athlete Development Lab, as well as inside sales representative with the LA Dodgers. Without further ado, let's bring out Bryce Only. Bryce, welcome, my man.
Mike, thanks for having me. Appreciate the kind introduction, man. And I couldn't be more excited to have the conversation today. So
no, 100% likewise. And we thank you so much for taking the time. And, a quick story before we dive into you and your background and everything there. You're all about transparency here on Interview with Influencers. And we speak about, often about the power of follow-ups, right? And building relationships. Well, long story short, where Bryce and I first connected, right, was over on LinkedIn. And this was back, I believe, in May. And we were going to grab a virtual cup of coffee. And, one thing led to another. And we missed the calls. And I went back this morning and it was on my end. I failed to follow up and reschedule. And fast forward, 6 months. And we connect with Game Plan You in the lab.
That's right.
And we both recognize, we're like, I think I recognize each other's names. And just a lesson, because I know a lot of our past guests have brought it up, how small the sport industry is. So there's just a prime time example of you never know where your paths are going to cross.
Exactly.
Shame on me for not following back up. You always got to, take where you fail and learn from that. So just a quick little nugget and story there. But Bryce, thanks again for joining us. So for those who don't know, let's get started here. Who is Bryce Only, right? Tell us a little bit about your background, and then what are you currently doing in the industry right now, and how did you get there?
Well, Mike, going back to the follow-up, man, it's a two-way street, but I think exactly right. It's a full circle moment when we got connected, Game Plan You and the Athlete Development Lab, man. It's full circle. But who is Bryce? My family currently resides in the Chicagoland area, and I'm the oldest of four. And the reason why I always mention that is my dad has always instilled in me to be a leader. And so after I got done playing high school ball, I got the opportunity to play baseball at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and ultimately ended up finishing up my career at Creighton University. Upon graduation, I got the opportunity to pursue my MBA and coach softball at Jacksonville University till about, August of 2019. Moved out to Los Angeles, California, and where started working with the Los Angeles Dodgers in January of 2020, but then as well launched the Athlete Development Lab in March of 2020. So it's been a tremendous growth experience. One, moving cross country, that was something that I never thought I would do, but I will say LA has been good to me thus far. So happy to be out here.
Yeah, no, I love that. And talk a little bit about that decision to get up and move, because especially in the sport industry, if you want to get into it, a lot of times you're going to have to be willing to pick up and move. And that's a big change for a lot of people. So can you speak to that and how that went and your mindset going into that?
Yeah, well, I think it was twofold, and I would be lying if I didn't mention my girlfriend, who currently works with the UCLA women's basketball team, and so that prompted the move. And really, when I first got out here, didn't know anybody, but knew I had an extreme passion for sports, innovation, and people, and started working at a startup, and really got exposed to that startup ecosystem. And through networking and meeting people, I just knew that I wanted to end up with a brand or a team, and interviewed with the Dodgers in November of 2019. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, I walked out of there and I thought I interviewed well, but I was like, man, there's a lot of talented people, and I wasn't sure if I had gotten the opportunity, but was thrilled when Patrick Simon gave me a call and told me that I would be a part of the Los Angeles Dodgers for the 2020 season. So that's how we got here to this point.
Love it. I love it. And I know it's been, an unorthodox year as we hit on in the opener for all of us, but for the audience out there, like, tell us a little bit about being a world champion. I know it was unorthodox, no fans in the ballpark, but how was that experience?
Man, it was just extremely grateful to be a part of such a great organization and work alongside some incredible people. But funny story, I was actually back home in Chicagoland, Algonquin, Illinois, and watching the game all by myself. I think my family was somewhere at the time, and they final pitch, strikeout. And I just remember, like, I'm jacked up out of my mind, and I'm looking around and I'm like, this is kind of different. Like, I'm expecting to be surrounded by people that I've worked alongside with, being in LA. But certainly, I'm not giving the title back at all. I definitely got the World Series hat. I can throw it on if you guys like. I'm just kidding. But it's no, man, it's just extremely grateful, to be honest with you. I've been very fortunate to work with some incredible people, and it's just been an incredible journey. And for the Dodgers, to have the runs that they've had, arguably being the best team in the MLB for the past few years, and to finally seal it off with a World Series championship, it's certainly a dream come true as a guy that played the game and had aspirations to play in the big leagues as well. So, yeah, definitely just grateful, Mike.
Yeah, talk about your first year, in professional sports. You bring home a ring. It's going to be like, because that doesn't happen every year. You hope it doesn't. That's the goal. But it's like, man, this championship. So what a great way to start. And I just love the mindset, because you are watching the game in your basement when, hypothetically in normal situation, you would be in the stadium with your coworkers and your clients and hugging everybody, but it's just making the most of the experience and realizing how blessed you are with that situation. So I love that point. So in terms of being a lifelong athlete, right, and playing high school, college baseball, with aspirations of going to play professional baseball, but what were some skills that you developed on your time on the diamond that translated into the professional and business world?
Mike, that's a great question, because I definitely still use those transferable skills each and every day. And for me, number one is really betting on yourself. I think as much as I was like to think that I was the number three hitter for each team I played for, I wasn't. I played on some teams with guys that are playing in the big leagues right now. And so, yeah, I had to wait my turn and definitely earn my opportunities, but really believing in myself at the time. Wasn't getting the reps that I initially thought I would be getting. But you know what? I still need to be able to put in the work. I still need to, have some type of standard for myself each and every day. So certainly, number one, betting on myself, and two, being a good teammate, right? I think, everybody wants to be the star. Everybody wants to be in the front. But how do you contribute to the team without necessarily playing? And so I think there's a lot of transferables in what I do now in my day-to-day is like, okay, if I'm not the lead generator, what can I do? Can I lead calls? Can I lead appointments set? Can I lead, let me reach out to a teammate and role play twice a week just so that we can continue to build our relationship and sharpen our skills, right? And then I think the last point is enjoy the journey, right? Life is, as much as we would like to think it's all positive, it's all highs and no lows, man, enjoy those lows. Because I think for me, looking back on my athletic career, there were some moments where I really was challenged mentally, physically, just beat, didn't know where to turn. And looking back and now as a professional, just really enjoying those moments where it doesn't work out for me, where it doesn't, end up the way I want it to end up. because those moments where it does, I'm just going to be even more thrilled and ecstatic that it did happen. And then remember the time that it didn't work out for me. And it's just say to myself, man, that was completely worth it. It was just a part of the journey. So 1, bet on myself, 2, being a good teammate, and definitely 3, enjoying the journey. Those 3 points right there.
I love all of that. I mean, if you're not willing to bet on yourself, if you don't have that self-confidence that you're going to be able to do great things, you're never going to do great things.
Absolutely.
Right? And be willing to come out of your comfort zone and take those chances. So I absolutely love that. In terms of, hustle, right? And a lot of people, growing up a lifelong athlete, I had that same, only up to high school, but, freshman, sophomore year on JV and wanting to get on varsity and sitting on the bench. I want to get out there and play. I feel like I have the skill set to go out there and compete, but you have to earn your spot. You have to earn your time. And it gets frustrating at times, and a lot of people may quit. But I think that the key skill that separates the ones that don't, or that have that hustle attitude, right? So can you speak to that a little bit more? And in those moments where you were like, I want to be out there, I want to play, but I'm not getting the reps. I'm going to go in and put in that work, though, just like I was, the starting shortstop or starting second baseman. So can you speak to the hustle and how that's impacted your life?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think what the saying is, you can't shine in front of thousands, or if I'm misquoting here, but basically Dad told me is, how can you compete in front of thousands of people in front of the big lights if you haven't put the work in when nobody's there, when the lights aren't right? It doesn't equate. It doesn't add up. You won't. I'm not a believer in, once you get to the game time, then I'll turn it on. No, you got each and every day, you got to build up. And to answer your question about hustle as a professional, I think that just means going beyond and doing things, if I know that, okay, my day with Dodgers starts at 9, having conversations like this at 7:30, having another call at 8:30, boom, now I can get my day with a runway start, really. And so going to network events, obviously it's a little bit different with virtual events now, but when I first moved out to California, I just remember getting up in the morning, having a call, listen to some audiobooks, like in that mindset, right? Going to my daily job, and then immediately going back on the computer. Okay, I know that I want to develop some skills from a branding standpoint. I know I really want to get good at sales. I know I want to really continue to build and cultivate the relationships within the sports industry and outside the sports industry. And that's a full-time job. And I think, I personally enjoy those things, meeting new people, sharpening my skills, iron sharpens iron. But for me, Mike, it never stops. I'm a firm believer. I woke up this morning and I'm going to maximize this day. And I'm not necessarily, wouldn't say a rah rah energy guy, but definitely someone who, if I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to maximize this time that I'm here. And so that's definitely what hustle means to me. I mean, I just think back to my dad, Dana Only. He still wakes up at 4:30 every day. And I just remember in high school, I was like, man, why is he up so early? And I didn't understand it at all. And now, I'm continuing to grow and develop and shape myself not only as a man, but as a professional. I get it of why, the preparation, getting up early, making sure that you can devote time to yourself, making sure that you're continuing to build and grow. And so to me, hustle is a never ending journey, man. You can always improve 1% better each and every day. By the end of the year, you're normally going to have some good results for you. So.
Yeah, I love all of that. And just being a student of the game, always. Right? I mean, you have your top athletes. You have to be. You have your top athletes like LeBron James, Mike Trout, but they're out there putting in more work than almost anybody else out there, and they're at the top of their game, and that's why they are where they are.
Absolutely.
Because of that work ethic. And I think, at least for me, and I'm sure you could attest to this, but people, may call you crazy. You're up at 4 a.m. every day. What are you doing? Like, you got to sleep in, but you fall in love with that. You fall in love with the grind, and getting up, getting better, and putting yourself in that position to ultimately get to where you want to go. So I love that. In terms of, let's pivot to success, right?
Okay.
Because it's a very interesting term, because the more I speak with students, through this podcast, I ask the question, like, what's your view of success? And a lot of times I get, I don't, winning. Well, what's winning to you? Right. So for you, what's your driver? How do you view success?
That's a great question, Mike. And I think still currently trying to define that. But right now, in my current role and current position, I think success is the impact that you have on people. How do you empower people to have opportunities, to resources, to networks? How do you empower people with information? So I think for me, how do you continue to influence people in a positive way? And, going back to my coaching experience, going back to even my athlete days, I never wanted to be a teammate that brought the energy down. I never wanted to be a teammate that was, hey, I'm checked out because I'm not getting the playing time that I wanted to get. Like, no, I've always wanted to be someone that if I'm here, I'm here for a reason, and I want to impact the people around me positively and continue to uplift the group. And so to me, Mike, success is continuing to positively impact people. I think back to calling people in a time like this, it's been extremely challenging, but I will say it is very fulfilling knowing that when I get a client on the phone and we're talking baseball, we're talking about Dodgers, I'm saying, okay, you got Game 7, you got Don Drysdale, or you got Sandy Koufax. Who are you going with and why? And being able to, have those meaningful conversations for these people that have had experiences with generations upon generations at Dodgers games. And so, I think for me, success is continuing to positively impact people. So.
I love it. And I think that's why, you and I, we just hit it off from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because as again, the great Larry Long says, ain't nobody got time for negativity. Nobody wants to be around that, right?
Right.
You want to be around people that are going to get you better, right? That are going to help you get to that next level. And ultimately, and I can't stress it enough, you will get to where you want to go by helping others. Others will give back tenfold if you're willing to give to them and continue to grow and make that positive impact, no matter where it is, no matter what you're doing. So I love those points. And I think that speaks a lot to who you surround yourself with, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of who you are the core 5 to 6 people that you surround yourself with. And, clearly you have a great inner circle, and, speak to that a little bit. Speak to some of those people or mentors in that inner circle and what their importance has been to you and your development.
Yeah. Well, I think Jared Barnes, one, has been someone who I've built a tremendous relationship with. I can not only call him my partner, but I can call him a close friend. And he was one of the first people I met when I moved out to LA. We connected via LinkedIn. And so being able to be around him and hear his journey of playing football at University of Louisville and getting the opportunity to play at the Ohio State. I put the "the" in there for the so I know the Buckeyes are playing on Monday, but being around him and what his mindset was like, and then the opportunity with the Dodgers, just continue to be around successful people, and yeah, they've been able to generate revenue at an extremely high level. That's something that I aspire to do. But you look at everybody within the organization, whether this is the only organization that they've worked for, or this is the second team or brand that they've worked for. I think back to some colleagues, Forbes, Sony, whatever the case may be. And I just think that, wow, like, I'll be a fly on the wall. I don't even have to obviously I want to contribute, but I just want to be a fly in the wall in the room and observe and be a part of these conversations when they're taking place. And so, like you said, Mike, you are who you surround yourself with, those 5 to 6 people. And I think consistently trying to, add value to those people consistently each and every day is something that's at the front of my mind, whether that's being a good teammate, bringing some positivity, being some, lending an ear when somebody needs to talk through an idea. I think that's always been important to me, and being able to be that person for someone, because I know in return, not even in return, but that energy is reciprocated and people will be open to doing the same thing for you. So yeah, Mike, I think for me that the circle, continuing to cultivate relationships at the highest level. And that was one of the things that I committed to in 2021 with my peers, my personal relationships, just wanting to be able to, not be average. Why would you? So I think for me that's what's really important to me as it relates to building relationships in my close circle.
Yeah. Again, nobody's got time for average.
No.
If you want to be average, you can go get a job, as I like to refer to it as, the frequent listeners of this show. If you want a job, that's great. Go be average. If you want a career, you got to pursue to be great, strive for greatness. So I love that point. Can you speak a little bit to, 1 or 2 of the key lessons that you may have learned from a Jared and someone else in your inner circle, mentors, whatever, that have helped you develop, over the past number of years?
For me, Mike, it's nobody cares about your career more than you care about your career. You can have all the conversations in the world that you want to, but if somebody gives you information and you don't take action towards it, how serious are you about where you want to go? And so I think for me, that's important. Yes, I always want to be able to have conversations and enjoy those conversations very much, but I'm all about taking action and all about being able to apply those things that those lessons that those people have really taught me. And so I think for me, what stuck out to me in terms of the relationships that I have in my close circle is, these people care, but I think nobody cares more than you do about your career than anybody else. And so going back to betting on yourself, what is your 5 to 9? What do those hours look like? What do your weekends look like? How are you growing? How are you learning? And, don't get me wrong. It's important to take breaks, but I think I think if you got 24 hours in a day, right? And, I think by the end of the year, December 25th or December 31st, 2021, are looking back, hey, how did I spend my time? How much time did I spend writing? How much time did I spend reading? How much time did I spend working on new ideas and building relationships at the highest level? And normally you get some pretty good returns by the end of the year. So,
yeah, like you said, success breeds success. And
yeah.
If you're not willing to take those actions and go out there and grow and put everything you have into it, you're never going to make it. Like you said, you're going to be average. So I love that point. And, speaking, I know we brought it up a bunch, right? Positivity, but it's so true, especially now.
Yeah.
Positivity and your mindset is everything. So can you speak to a time in either your professional career or personal, could be playing career as well, that you faced, a time of adversity, and how did you cope with that and how did you get through it?
I think for me, COVID-19 definitely put a pause on what selling would have looked like in a quote unquote normal circumstance. But I was challenged, calling people virtually, meeting up on Zoom calls, not sure what the season was going to look like. And I think that point of adversity, really leaning on my peers, my directors, and my close circle outside of who I work with the Dodgers has helped me get through this time. When I see an individual selling at an extremely high level, making a ton of calls, that makes me want to up my game up a little bit and add value and contribute to the team. And when I don't feel that way, where I'm like, man, I'm just in not the best headspace, hey, can we talk for 15, 20 minutes? It doesn't have to be necessarily about anything, work related, but can we just talk, have a conversation? And I think those really leaning on people that care about me the most and that I care about that the most as well has got me through those points of adversity. As much as I'd like to think, or we'd like to think, that we have it all figured out, when you have a supporting cast around you, reach out, send them a text. Hey, let them know that you're struggling and show that vulnerability. And I think you'll realize that your relationships will really blossom and bloom that way.
Yeah, it's all about being authentic,
right?
You could be as happy, or say you're happy and positive 24/7. No, you're not. Everybody goes through valleys, but it's all about being authentic and being able to, it's not a comfortable conversation to have with those people, but once you open up and build that relationship, it will become comfortable.
Right.
It will become comfortable.
I couldn't agree more.
Just continue to be vulnerable, put yourself in some uncomfortable situations. So I'm curious, that leads me to another point. Like, speak to some times where you stepped out of your comfort zone, and how did those situations help you grow and get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I think personally, starting the Inside the Lab podcast, Mike, I think I told you this. I don't like speaking on camera, and it might fool some people right now that are watching this, but I have a terrible fear of that. And so back when quarantine, even before quarantine, I was like, this is something that I really want to overcome. Start doing interviews over Zoom, over Google Hangout, whatever the case may be. And then you have the Inside the Lab podcast, same thing, at being able to have conversations at a really high level over a camera, which, I think my fear is, I will say with confidence that it's gone away, and I'm feeling pretty confident right now. So we're feeling good. But really for me, that was a time where I knew I wanted to really grow, and I knew that it was elements where I might be missing out from, from a career development standpoint and growth standpoint. One thing I will say, you're doing some tremendous work with this, Mike. And so kudos to you. But I think for me, definitely, speaking on camera, but like I said, I'm feeling good that, we're past that point at this point.
Yeah, you're fooling a lot of people, because a lot of people wouldn't have expected that one, man. But no, and it's so true. And that's just such a great example. And if you haven't checked out Bryce's podcast, Inside the Lab, definitely check it out. And I could plug in the information for that later on. But really, really great opportunity. And he's doing some big things there. But if you aren't looking, like going back to being average, right? If you're not looking to come out of your comfort zone and look for new tasks, you're never going to get to where you want to be. You're just going to be average. Always be looking for that next step, even if it's uncomfortable, like with the podcast with you, right? You said, I'm not comfortable on camera, but I don't care. Right. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to struggle through it, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to get to where I want to be. So I love that point. So, I know we're closing on 25 minutes here, so let's kind of pivot now the conversation specifically towards the career seeker, the heart and soul of this podcast. And in terms of your interview process, right, and specifically for the Dodgers and maybe some other roles you had before then, like, can you speak to how that entry-level interview process went, and how do you feel you differentiated yourself throughout that process?
Okay. So, I think it's important to tell this story. So I had 10 interviews before the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I got denied all 10 opportunities. Right. And you can imagine what that took on me, the toll that took on me mentally. But looking back, I will say it's trial and error. If you don't know what you don't know. And I think for me, each interview was a learning opportunity. You always want to ask effective questions. If you're scheduled for an hour and the interview ends at 30, 45 minutes, stay there for that next 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and ask questions about the company, take a tour, do some things like that. I will say LinkedIn is a powerful tool. Not only do you get to showcase yourself in terms of the things that you're passionate about, not only in your day-to-day, but whether it's entrepreneurship in the startup space, you can really showcase yourself well, and then reach out to those hiring managers, those people that you are going to interview with, and continue to build out those relationships. Not even from obviously you want to get the job that you apply for, but these people are incredible people that work at incredible companies. And going back to what we had mentioned before with surrounding yourself with great people, why wouldn't you want to learn about their journeys? Why wouldn't you want to learn about how they got there and why they chose this specific company, and being genuinely curious? And I think for me, that's what has changed, right? And I think going into the Dodgers role in the interview as a day interview, I remember this, and felt very comfortable. Baseball being my love, my passion. Being at Dodger Stadium, I'm like a little kid, deer in headlights. I'm looking around like, oh my gosh, like it's a museum and it's beautiful. And for me, I think what really stood out is I was asking questions. I was the first one to volunteer to do things, and people remember that. People remember you taking that initiative. And so, and that last point, I will say, please send a thank you note and a follow-up, because there was a lot of hard work that went into planning to interview, to setting up those calendars, sending out the invite, getting your resume sent to all those people. And I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't say a thank you and setting a follow-up note. Something like going back to trial and error I didn't do before, but life is an ongoing journey, and we're continuously learning. And so definitely, if I could break it down into 3 points, continue to try new things, ask effective questions, and then follow up. Always got to follow up.
I love it. So many great points to hit on, quickly. First off, the term genuine curiosity that you mentioned. I've always been a curious person, but I heard that phrase genuine curiosity the other day for the first time, actually, believe it or not. Okay. And I absolutely love it, because that's how you build relationships. It's asking questions specific, tell me how you got to where you are in your career. Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges you had? Things like that, and just genuinely be curious. Don't just ask the question, ask the question. Right. Listen to the response. Don't prep your response, listen. So I love that genuine curiosity piece. The follow-up, I don't think I need to dive in. I think you did a great job with that. Please follow up. Please, even if it's just a LinkedIn message, follow up. Handwritten note, 10 times better. But if it's just a LinkedIn message, it'll do the job in email. Just thank them for their time.
Yeah.
And then go above and beyond, right? Like everything you mentioned is what makes a really good sales professional, right? The little things, it's the little things. And for a sales role, for any role, that's some of the things you need to do. So speak to right now, right? Bryce, I know there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're starting to see it, especially in the sport industry, with more and more jobs starting to slowly be posted, which is great. But there's a lot of talent out there. We're not going to sugarcoat this. There is a lot of talent from the class of 2020 to, unfortunately, executives that got let go during the pandemic. So there's going to be a lot of competition. So what are some things that you recommend to those students right now that they could be doing today, starting right now to help better themselves when the interviews do start and they get in front of these executives to put themselves in that best position to get a career?
No, Mike, that's a great question. And I think it's starting out with, a little bit of reverse engineering. And so starting where you are now and asking yourself the question, at the end of your career, where do you want to be at? Do you want to be working in premium? Do you want to be working in global partnerships? Do you want to be working in community relations? Whatever the case may be, where do you want to be? And then asking yourself the question, going on LinkedIn, looking up those people that are in those roles. Okay, what was their career journey like? What skills did they learn? Did they get an MBA? Did they get their master's degree? Did they go to law school? And then doing some reverse engineering that way and figuring out, okay, what action steps do I need to take, or what skills do I need to learn and develop in order to go to that interview, and being able to speak to it intelligently, and then as well as have points of where, okay, you demonstrate the ability to execute at an extremely high level. And then the last point I'd say is, given this time, really explore those passion projects that you really, think about late at night when you can't sleep, like, I wish I would have done this, or dive deep into those. And really, if you love content, start building out your own content, identify 3 or 4 verticals that you really are passionate about. And for me, whether it's, I'm really big about my lifestyle, I'm really big about career development. I love sports, and, okay, how can you build out content to where somebody asks you in an interview, well, what have you done before this interview? Well, this is what I've done. I've launched the podcast. I put together 20 digital assets just for creative purposes. I had 150 conversations with executive leaders in the industry. And so I think you can really position yourself well if you use these tools and use these, your time wisely. And so I think right now for those people that are seeking some jobs, like you said, Mike, there's a lot of talented people out there. And I think it's great that you brought that up, because a lot of times people get discouraged when they don't get jobs. And it's not necessarily you as the individual. It's just that they might have found someone that was the perfect fit for the job, right? And so I think it's important to keep that in mind. But yeah, using these social networks as a real runway for you to be able to position yourself and pitch yourself in a positive light to when you are interviewing.
That's it. That is such a great point. It's been a terrible with what's going on with the pandemic, right? It's been a really bad year, but it's going to be what you make it. You could just sit around, and say you lost an opportunity or got let go. You could sit around and play Xbox all day and, use the excuse there's no jobs online, so I'm just going to wait it out. Or you could say, no, I'm going to take my time, and even if I'm not getting paid for it, I'm going to grow. I'm going to do something I wanted to pursue, that the transferable skills are going to help me position myself, right? And when hiring, because you'll be damned when the interviews start. The hiring manager, one of the first questions he's going to ask: how did you spend the last year? What have you been doing? Right.
That's the very first question. And you come prepared. You can. I mean, I'm a firm believer that the people that are doing the extra work, going back to those hustle points that we talked about, word gets around quick, especially in the industry that we're in. And, if you're doing some great work or not even great work, if you're just trying to improve, and people recognize that, people have been in your shoes before. They didn't just end up as senior vice president. They started probably at an inside sales entry level role, and they just worked their butt off and built relationships at an extremely high level, and they got to their position that they are today. So I think it's important to understand that the people that you are interviewing with have been in your shoes before. And so definitely important to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's it. And especially from an entry level role, right? is you'll be able to be taught the job in most cases, right? Unless you're a doctor or a trainer or whatever, that you need your MBA and you need to go to school for that. But that's a little different. But in terms of especially the business world, you can be taught those skills. Managers can teach you that. They can't teach your positive attitude. They can't teach your passion. They can't teach your just hunger to get better and grow. And those are the things they're going to look for, so even if you start a podcast and it's not smooth, it's not great when you first start, you're making that effort and they see that. So I love that point. And, wrapping it up here, I got two final questions. And in terms of you and your career, right? So if you could go back to, you just graduated from Creighton. If you could go back then and give yourself, 2 or 3 pieces of advice, what would that be?
Start thinking about what you want to do your freshman year, and not saying that you have to have it all figured out, but just identify those passions. What do you like to do? What do you find yourself gravitating towards without any effort, without having to watch a motivation video to go do it? In my workout this morning, Mike, I'm not going to lie, man, it was rough, but put some motivational video on and we're good to go. But really, what are those things that you're extremely passionate about? Maybe identify 3 or 4 of those things, from your freshman to your senior year, and start building relationships with those people, whether it's in the industry. Your professors are great people to reach out to. They have tremendous experience and incredibly intelligent and have knowledge that, you might not necessarily get on a LinkedIn, and those relationships are a little bit more intimate. And then going back to what I would have told myself senior year, man, really, it goes back to preparation and planning. I think my dad, he always mentioned, Bryce, what you do from 14 to 18 is going to resonate between 19 to 23. And what you do from 19 to 23 is what you're going to get from 24 to 28, right? And so if you can take your life in the 4s and really, college, going back to your freshman year, hey, that's what I would tell myself. Start my freshman year, start identifying those verticals, what I'm passionate about, and start meeting some people that are currently working in those verticals.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. Well said. I mean, and we're not saying, right? You're not saying you can't enjoy your college, right?
No,
you can't
enjoy
it. Yeah.
Not at all. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think if you're going back to being genuinely curious, if you love what you want to do, if you really don't, like I said, don't have to force yourself to get out of bed to go do something, it should be a no-brainer that you want to have a conversation with someone who's in that field or in that industry, not because you want to get a job out of it, but because you genuinely are curious and you want to improve and grow. And I think for those people, for those individuals, just starting your freshman year, because, 4 years can make a difference, and you'll be able to look back when you graduate and be like, wow, I put in all this work over the past 3 to 4 years, and look what it's gotten me. Look at the opportunities that are presenting itself. And not only that, look at the people that I've been able to meet along the way. And so I think that's important to definitely note, Mike.
100%. Yeah. And like I said, right before, is you can enjoy college. You can play your sport. You can play intramurals, be part of clubs, go out and party, be safe, be 21, but go out and have a good time. Enjoy it, because that's going to shape who you are and your friend groups and all that. But take the time to figure out what you want to do, because you're going to figure out what you hate doing before you figure out what you love doing. So
Agreed.
Get those things that you hate doing out of the way.
Agreed.
Figure it out and get that experience. I mean, in your Dodgers interview and the interviews you had prior, how did they ask about your classes and your GPA?
No, they didn't. They asked me, what have you done? And speak to that experience and how that would make you a good fit for this particular role. And so going back to, identifying those 3 to 4 verticals and start somewhere. It doesn't have to be a finished project. It doesn't have to be the best thing in the world. But normally when you dedicate time to something, you get better at it, right? And so over those, you start at 18, and by the time you're 22, then you have a portfolio to be like, hey, Bryce, what have you done? Well, this is what I've done in the past 4 years. These are the things that I've learned. this is where I've grown, and this is where I'm hoping to go, and the direction I'm hoping to get into. So, for those career seekers, really, taking that time and mapping it out, because nobody cares about your career and your development more than you do. And so I think that's important to keep in mind.
100%, 100%. And you and I had this conversation before the holidays, or right after the holidays. We're still grinding. We had our podcast on the 26th, right? The morning after Christmas. But you got to enjoy what you're doing. You got to love it. And when you do that and you find it, it's not work. You and I were talking about how people are like, "Oh, you're crazy. You're working all this time. Come hang out." It's like, okay, we'll hang out at some point, but I love what I'm doing. This isn't work to me.
Right.
So, and I know that a lot of that kind of plays into the lab. So to close out here, can tell the audience a little bit more about what you and Jared are doing with the lab.
Yeah. The Athlete Development Lab mission is to horizontally connect people across the sports industry. And for us, we love intentional conversations and inclusive community, and notice that there were some barriers of entry to get into the sports industry. Okay, say you want to work in the MLB, there's 30 teams. Okay, you break that down by department. Okay, you got sales, you have community relations, you have baseball ops, you have player development. There's only X amount of spots that are in all of these organizations. And so you mentioned this, it's competitive. It's extremely competitive. And so I think going back to your question about what the lab is, we really built this community for those individuals that want to get into the sports industry, and for those individuals that are already in the sports industry that want to continue to grow and develop. And I think that's important, because it can be challenging times to get constructive criticism and to get feedback. And, to be honest, tough to know am I heading in the right direction? Am I meeting the goals that I want to set for myself? And if I'm not, and, as much as we'd like to think we have it figured out as people, man, we don't. And it's important to be able to have a circle around you and people that you can go to and get some feedback and get some guidance. So the Athlete Development Lab has been a tremendous growth opportunity in terms of putting myself out there and really figuring things out. We've had some great moments, but we've also had some low moments. And so please follow us on Twitter. We have a LinkedIn page, and as well as the podcast here. Episode actually just dropped this morning, so go check it out. But Mike, yours will be released here soon. But like I said, it's a really an inclusive community, and always happy to chat and help people grow and develop as much as I can. So please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is bryce.only@thelabcommunity.com. Yes, my last name is Only, Only. For those people that are curious, why does he not have a last name? No, I do. So no, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Love it. I love it. And, you guys are doing so many positive things for so many people. And that's why I think, we love being around each other, and because we feed off this positivity, and we're just doing good things with good people for good people. So right. I love it. Keep up the good work with everything you're doing. So excited to continue not only to develop our relationship with Game Plan U in the lab, but also just you and I from a personal and professional standpoint. So super excited for that. In terms of last thoughts for career seekers, okay. Any last minute advice or last minute takeaway, a message that you have for them?
Last piece of advice I'd give for career seekers is it's a journey. You're gonna have lows, you're gonna have highs. Like I said, I had 10 interviews before the Dodgers interview, and I got told no at all those opportunities, right? And so leaning in on those moments where you're not feeling the greatest, where you're not feeling the strongest, where you're like, man, I don't want to reach out to another individual. I don't want to have another one-off conversation. I don't want to go to this networking event, right? Really leaning into those moments, because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There always is. You may not be able to see it right now. I go back to, my athlete days, one coach, Mark Reardon, bless his heart, Iowa Western, he told me one day, the game of baseball pays you when it wants to pay you, right? You're not on your clock. You're not on your time. And that's the same thing as a professional and career development, right? It doesn't repay you right now, but the work you put in today pays dividends in the long run. So I think for those individuals, really being able to lean on those emotions where you're not feeling the greatest and really understanding that, there's a purpose, there's a reason you're going through and experiencing all this. You may not see it now, but have faith that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Love it. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
Great way to end it. Great way to end the first episode of Interview with Influencers of 2021. Can't thank you enough, Bryce, for the time and jumping on. I know with everything busy and your schedule going on, so thank you so much. On behalf of Mike, that's Bryce, on Game Plan U, keep swinging, everybody. It's a big time 2021. Let's make it a game-changing year. If there's anything I could do to help, or Bryce, just let us know. Take care, everybody. Go crush it. Bye-bye.